I'm revisiting the Mazda CX-9. Despite this being one of the older Mazda products, it's worth another look, namely because I was in the market for a larger hauler to transport my Teddy Ruxpin dolls and plenty of my camera gear, among other things. So let's talk about the interior space. This is the last generation Mazda interior design, and it still has held up very well. When you get to the signature trim, and I understand this is $47,000, which I'm not going to get into right now, but for that price, when you look at the door panels, there is a great use of soft touch materials and alloys. The bottom half of the door doesn't look like it came from the Walmart discount bin. The middle section is pretty durable plastics. Then you get to these woodish inlays, if it's even real wood. And the middle part of the door looks great. The stitching, the padding, the leathers, again, looks superb. The center dashboard, or the dashboard, has a very shallow depth to it. It's not this enormous piece of plastic. So the benefit is you feel like you're in a much bigger space than you really are. The center stack area is a little large compared to some of the newer vehicles. It takes up a lot of legroom over here, specifically on the right side. So if you have bigger legs, you have to put your seat back, this might be one of the issues. But the physical controls in here are tremendous. The steering wheel is not littered with a million buttons, and the buttons that do exist are very clean. Now on to the negatives. Now, despite what I said about the dash being more compact, if you're a larger person, that's where the current generation Mazda products suffer. And the elbow room, it just feels more cramped if you're bigger. For me, I'm totally fine in here, but the competitors definitely have an edge there. The next part is the technology implementation. Despite all their safety stuff working pretty well, the infotainment, they've left the previous gen. And they've left the previous generation screen in here. When you look at the resolution of this, it hasn't aged well. The backup cameras are, well, the backup camera, it looks like something I'd buy on eBay for $20 that I would stick on the back that's wireless. The resolution is so bad. And then other than that, let's talk about the back seat space. Well, it's great to be in the back seat. Not really. These are very comfortable. I mean, to me, they're more comfortable than my Bentley Bentayga that I have. So when I'm cruising with my friends in my Ferraris, you know, they're like, hey, let's take the CX-9 out. I'm like, really? You want to take this? They're like, yeah, we're really comfortable back here. So that's what we're doing. Me and my friends are out having a latte, coffees, iced coffees. But let's talk about the materials. It's got peasant blockers. Okay, that works. It's got this huge center console area that they've added over the years. It has a great armrest, it has seat heaters, and you have individual HVAC controls in the back. Now, you get two little fans here, and it feels great. I feel like I could go cruising on the beach. The seats do recline. They recline pretty well, and they recline really far forward. So if I got a kink in my back, I can kind of set the seats here, and then I can improve my flexibility. Now with my 12-inch, this makes it a lot easier for me to use this. Now we can also slide forward and back. So, you know, the thing is the mechanical lever here, the lever, it's got a real positive click to it. So you know when you're locked in place. So if you're somebody that has like that phobia or security issue with the seat not being locked, they got this nailed. So that's one of the best in class levers and seat designs that I've seen. The CX-9, the rear end, let me tell you a little story. Jack and I were in Irvine, California to shoot our Mazda Miata documentary, and we shot it with the CX-9. So this is by default the best vehicle ever because we made a masterpiece video, about like 15 videos about the Miata. You can watch it. You should go buy one today, buy a couple. And then when you're at the dealership, you should buy a CX-9. And I'll tell you why. Because you can have a family in the CX-9 is why. You can fit a couple kids back here. That's what you want, isn't it? Don't you want to help the economy? Don't you want to go shopping? That's what you do with the CX-9. Let me show you. I can fit a backpack back here. I can fit my drone case. This carpet pulls up. The pile is really nice. When you vacuum it, you can put lines in it. When this goes up, don't worry, You can store stuff down there, dog treats, or you can put your kids' toys under there. That's right. So the biggest negative part about the CX-9, I'll just get to that before the shop. Pull the seat up. It's the best SUV ever, except for this. Doesn't really fit anything in the back with the seats up. My backpack has this much space before the hatch hits it. So the compromise to have this third row really affects cargo volume. And compared to the Telluride Palisade and New Highlander, this really suffers and shows its age. If I had to wish for one thing, in a perfect SUV like this, it's that they would fix some of this, among other things. Well, we'll get into the shop and talk about the rest. We are underneath the CX-9 again. Not a lot has changed here since the last time we looked at it.
But the Takumis have been real busy.
The Takumis have crafted a few things here, Jack, like the wheel package, the wheel and tire packages.
It's incredible. I feel Jin-Tai with this.
You mean Jin by Itai?
That one, yeah.
Jin by Itai stands for horse and rider as one. It's about connecting the driver with this sky-active architecture.
It's just incredible, Mark.
What we suggest is you stop this video now, go to your local dealership, contact James Orton and Crystal Lake Mazda.
And buy 15.
No, not buy 15, Jack. Buy the entire country's fleet. Have them bring in 100,000 of these, which they probably haven't made 100,000. No, the long story short is they haven't updated too much here since we talked about it last.
This is still based on the Sky Active platform.
Correct, which is shared between the CX-30, the Mazda 3, the CX-5 and this. This is the largest platform of them all. They've extended it out, changed suspension around to make this the family hauler you may have always dreamed of, or may not. They've added G-vectoring control, that's the main thing, which is their torque reduction system. And they've got further into that with the CX-30 with G-vectoring plus. But essentially, it can dial back the torque on the motor to get the car to turn in more naturally. There's a whole bunch of stuff behind it that you're never going to understand, which we talked about in great length on other products they did. But this is, again, on-demand all-wheel drive system paired to a front-wheel drive setup.
It always does feel front-wheel drive driven or based.
It does. So it's an on and off switch. It detects slip in the front. All the sensors work together to transfer power to the back when it needs it. It's very competent. For most drivers, this is exactly what you want without wasting too much energy or fuel economy to have this. It's very efficient. But that's all you want to know, I'm sure. Let's take this out on the road and see how it drives.
All right.
Oh, the CX-9, the glory, the turbocharged four-cylinder, Jack.
This is the signature, Mark.
Oh, pardon me. Whoo!
Are we in a diesel?
Sure feels like it. All the torque is down low. There's nothing happening up top. It shifts at like 5,500 RPMs. But who cares about that? You're buying a SUV of this type to live life in the slow lane. Smooth sailing, cushy ride, electronics. So, tell me about your experience with the CX-9. We're a couple years removed from driving this.
So we've had this is our third time. You had the CX-9 for your original review for about a week. Then more recently, when we did our Mazda documentary in Irvine, Mazda was kind enough to lend us a CX-9 signature for a little over a week, and now I've had this for a week.
Okay.
I will tell you this. Mazda's greatest strength and biggest weakness is how insular the brand is, meaning their products aren't designed necessarily to benchmark other cars. They build things the way they want to, and that's almost to a fault, particularly when it comes to space and practicality. So the problem with the Mazda 3, the CX-5, and this thing is when you compare it to other products in this segment, it lacks a lot of the interior volume. And when you ask Mazda, they're like, well, if a car is too big, you introduce clutter into your life and you're less happy. And sure, that may be correct. I know Mazda's done all sorts of studies, but the American buying market doesn't care.
I don't particularly disagree with you, Jack, but what I don't like, why is there torque steer in this?
And that's one of the things that I don't understand. There are definitely compromises with this product, and as we talked about earlier, I think it's because this architecture has been stretched to its absolute limits.
Yeah, I think they've reached the end of the road for what they can do with mean, granted, okay, Mazda is a small automotive manufacturer. They're the first ones to tell you they have to do a lot with a little. And when you try to compete in a segment like this, and I don't know that I would give this as hard of a time except with the price tag. At $47,000 for this signature model, it's far, 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 far too much money and pushing you in the price category of competitors that have surpassed them. And this is one of the oldest Mazda products. So in some ways, I have to give them a little bit of slack in the fact that this isn't completely up to date.
And it's due for a refresh.
And it's due for, I would hope, a pretty major refresh. So when I drove the Mazda 6 the last time, I said they've reached the limit of what they could do with that sedan. It's like luxury car levels of refinement. It has all this potential, it has great interior, but it's still fighting the front wheel drive feeling that it's built on. And this is the same thing. If you want to go upscale like this,
which is Mazda's whole goal now.
Yes, if you want to go upmarket, you want to go luxury, which this is teetering on, this needs to be transformed into a rear-wheel drive architecture. Now, there are a lot of good things about this. Some will argue the steering's too heavy. I think it's a pleasant change from a lot of the other manufacturers. In terms of handling and overall dynamics, when you turn the wheel and go through turns and corners, it does a great job. The ride control and body control is really good on most pavement types. The seats are super soft. It absorbs a lot. The subtle impacts or smaller impacts are great, but when you get over rough stuff like this, it doesn't do a good job isolating each corner of the car. So if you hit a bump over there, a harder bump, there's this shock wave that gets sent through the whole car, and it doesn't feel very rigid. And I don't know if it's just an extension of the way that they have the suspension tuned, or if this platform has been extended out so much that they can't control certain frequencies or vibrations in it. But that's my only real negative about the ride quality. Really hard jarring hits or potholes doesn't do well. Everything else, this is smooth as butter.
My thing about this car, and like the CX-9 as a whole, the CX-9 competes in a segment where people care about two things. They want minivan-like space without having to buy a minivan, and absolute ride quality. Mazda has sacrificed in both of those categories to build a car that drives a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And whether or not you value that and you want an experience that doesn't make you so bored you want to drive in oncoming traffic is why you'd buy the CX-9.
Yeah. I guess. This is the toughest Mazda product for me. I mean, it's definitely, to me, it's the worst one. It's the worst one out of all of them, and all of them are, you can't say that Mazda has a bad product. And this is, like, if you want to go down the list.
This is the bottom.
This is the bottom one, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just no longer competitive with, like, what everybody else is doing. The Telluride is a really good example. The new Highlander is a really good example of two amazing three rows that do a better job
at being a three row.
Correct. Final thoughts on the Mazda CX-9. We've spent so much time in this vehicle and other Mazda products that we joke around a lot. But as a viewer, you want to know a few things. One, is it good? And yes, it's good. There are some problems with it at its core. That's because they are trying to adapt this architecture and platform to the American market, and some of it doesn't translate well. People want a big vehicle that's flashy, has every tech feature, and it has a ton of cargo capacity and rides like a sofa on wheels. And other manufacturers have figured that out, and the CX-9 is now behind. And I would say on the CX-5, it's not that big of a deal. On the Mazda 3, it's not that big of a deal, but here it is. Those compromises in storage and interior capacity that every person I've talked to seems to harp on about this is very apparent now with newer products coming to market. So that has to change. Unfortunately, if that means they have to sacrifice some of the Mazda-ness out of the CX-9 for the American market, I think it better suits what they need to do. The pros are this: the interior is still great. It feels well built. The materials are good. Everything is super comfortable. The seating surfaces, it's just the attention to detail is there. Even though this is the last generation infotainment unit, it still works really well, and I appreciate it more with the passage of time. The physical controls are great. And really, most everything in terms of driving is good. Now, the outside, which I didn't talk about much, There's some things that really bother me when you look at this more, and you notice it more with the CX-30. These huge chunks of plastic. You don't notice it so much from the distance, but when you get up close, it looks so cheap. And this stuck-on chrome trim here, and in other places, it looks like something out of a Chrysler product from like, well, probably last year.
Yeah, chrome. I like chrome on everything. I like plastic chrome on my fucking underwear.
But there's little things, and they don't add up to a whole lot. But again, if you value comfort and insane cargo capacity, the CX-9 is not going to please you. If you just need the third row and you want good driving dynamics and a pretty solid drivetrain, I still really like the CX-9. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.